So we know Annabeth is brilliant, even by the standards of the Athena cabin. She's been able to outwit gods and monsters alike for years, and she doesn't rely on pure emotional instinct when fighting. Gut feelings don't usually mean a lot to her, but when she and Percy are fending off the forces of the Titan army in The Last Olympian, she steps in front of Percy and takes a dagger strike that would have otherwise killed him. At this point, Percy had bathed in the river Styx, and Annabeth knew that he only had one small weak spot, which was located on the small of his back. She didn't know where it was at that time, but she knew how to take a blow for him, and when she was in recovery, she can't articulate how she knew that Percy was in danger. She just acted on instinct. But we think we figured out exactly why she did it. We believe that her reflexes came down to a combination of 3 different factors that we're going to break down. The first of which is her tactical, logical mind and her knowledge of swordplay. Even though Annabeth doesn't prefer to sword fight if she can help it, she's very good at it, and every time she does draw her blade, she's able to hold her own quite well. Even though she might not match up to someone as skilled as Percy or Luke, she knows what she's doing, and she knows that this is Percy's strength. Since Percy is a swordsman, she knew that he would never place his weak point on his limbs, since those are not only the most likely to get maimed, but the hardest to protect with armor. Percy doesn't usually wear armor on his arms or legs, and if anything, he primarily dons a chestplate. But based on his interview in the Demigod Files, we know that he doesn't necessarily like wearing it. So, on a logical level, Annabeth automatically knows that he's not going to leave his arms, legs, or torso vulnerable, and Percy is skilled enough swordsman to never give his back. He can't see or fight behind him, so his years of conditioning have taught him to always keep his enemy in front of him, and thus keep his back protected. But Annabeth is smart enough to not just know this, but we believe there's a significant emotional bond at work, which brings us to our second piece, which is how well she knew Percy specifically. Percy can't watch his own back. That's always been her job, and vice versa. That's just how they operate together. She's been working with Percy long enough to know exactly how he handles combat since they've fought together so many times. During the Battle of the Labyrinth, when Campy attacks, they fight together as a unit by creating openings for the other to exploit. And when Kaiser attacks their strip and Mark of Athena, Percy specifically calls out how he and Annabeth automatically went back to back as they've done a million times before. And yes, we know that the Mark of Athena took place a year later, but the point still stands regardless. This is just the most prevalent time that is put in writing directly. Annabeth has been watching Percy for years, and knows that he always keeps his enemies in front of him as a skilled swordsman is taught on day 1. So he's always instinctively protecting his back, and dare we say that Ethan Nakamura did hit Percy's weak point, just didn't kill him. Keep in mind, Annabeth is already one of the most important people that Percy has in his life, even if they weren't dating yet. The mere thought of her kept him together while he bathed in the Styx, even though dipping in the Styx is meant to dissolve mortals and demigods on contact. He traveled across the country for her uninvited in the Titan's Curse and trusts her completely. And in both a literal and metaphorical sense, she has always had his back covered. Percy wasn't just putting his Achilles heel in a place where he could protect it the best. He put it somewhere that Annabeth would also be guarding at any given moment. And he trusted her to keep him safe more than he trusted himself. In the blink of an eye, when that knife was coming down on Percy, we believe Annabeth understood all of this, not just on a logical or strategic level, but on an emotional one as well. This is her job, just as it's Percy's job to watch her back. But the third point is actually the most tragic aspect of this theory, which is that this whole time, she's been waiting for Percy to die. The third point is actually the entire crux of our video on Annabeth's darkest secret, so we'll be touching on it briefly here, but for a full breakdown on how this knowledge tore her apart for years, we highly recommend that video. When Annabeth was 10, she read the Great Prophecy for the first time and committed it to memory. What she didn't know, however, was that the half-blood of the eldest gods who would make it to 16 against all odds was not the same hero that would have his soul reaped by the cursed blade. There was no signaling in the prophecy that it was switching subjects from Percy to Luke halfway through. So when Annabeth met Percy and learned that he was a son of Poseidon, she had every reason to believe that he would have his soul reaped on his 16th birthday. So when we take this knowledge and apply it to the days leading up to the Battle of Manhattan, we see that Annabeth had been waiting for Percy to die for years. And this is why she tried so hard not to fall in love with him, since Talia had already died once already, Luke had abandoned her, and she had been alone since the age of 7. When the battle happens, however, we believe Annabeth was able to put all 3 pieces together in one split second. And even if she didn't realize it, her mind was working on overdrive and she saw everything. She might not have been consciously aware of exactly what happened, but she's smart enough to draw this conclusion without even realizing it. Logically, Percy would put his weak point in a spot that's hard to hit and well protected. But emotionally, he placed it somewhere that he knew she'd be covering too. This is also one of the only times that we ever see Annabeth act on emotion rather than logic. And in our Fatal Flaws video, we touched on the cavern of Phobos and Deimos and the blood of Olympus. Annabeth's fatal flaw is her pride. It's the belief that not only can she solve any problem, but that every problem has a logical solution that can be reasoned rather than felt. The cabin, however, demanded emotional intelligence. Even if it meant throwing logic to the wind, and if Piper hadn't been there, Annabeth never would have made it out in one piece. She's always been strictly logical, whenever possible, and we believe her mind is so attuned that she came to this conclusion faster than even she could comprehend what she had figured out. This not only goes to show how much Percy trusted her, but it demonstrates exactly how well the two work together on a fundamental instinctual level that can't be articulated logically. They can just read each other. It's also just one of the many reasons why this relationship worked so well. But that's our take, and we want to see what you guys have to say about it too. We love this series, we love talking about this series, and we want you guys to jump in on the conversation and let us know what you think. As always, my friends, take care, don't anger the gods, and we'll see you in the next one.